Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Thursday, June 13th. Over the next few days, we'll definitely have impacts across the Great Basin. First, the heat will continue over central and eastern areas with near record temperatures in parts of Nevada and Utah. And then we still will have some isolated thunderstorms as moisture pushes a little bit further north into central Utah today and also down into the Arizona Strip, with a few isolated storms along the Sierra Front and into parts of Idaho and Wyoming. Also, winds will be picking up, especially over southern areas today, so we will see some wind gusts between 25 and 35 miles per hour in the Arizona Strip and parts of southern Utah with single-digit or low-teen relative humidity despite the moisture moving north. So we could have some critical areas down south today. Tomorrow, winds really start to pick up over western Nevada and the Sierra Front, along with very dry conditions, so we could see those wind gusts in the 30 to 35 mile per hour range. Also, over the eastern half of the area on Friday, we will see an increase in moisture and thunderstorms, especially for eastern Utah, and these will be a mix of wet and dry both today and tomorrow. As we move into Saturday, we have a cold front sweeping the north, so we will see an increase in winds across parts of eastern Idaho into Wyoming. However, relative humidity up north will be a little bit higher, but wind gusts will be in that 30 to 40 mile per hour range. And we could still see those breezy winds with drier conditions down south again on Saturday. Looking at the last 24 hours, we have had a few isolated thunderstorms in parts of western Nevada and also across eastern Nevada into northern Utah, but very minimal and again mostly on the drier side. Great Basin fire activity is shown here. We have seen an increase in smaller fires across the northern half or even southern half of the Great Basin recently. The most notable, at least in size, have been over parts of western Nevada, and that did happen a couple of days ago, mostly in the grass and in the lower elevations. Looking at our observed precipitation, over the last 7 days, we've seen precipitation mainly focused over the northern half of the region, but still been largely below normal for the time of year, with the exception of pockets up in Idaho and far northern Nevada that have seen near or just above normal precipitation over the last 2 weeks. Our ERCs have been critical and remain critical over southern areas of the Great Basin, where ERCs are above the 85th to 90th percentile. ERCs are starting to dry out with this recent heat and dryness further north, so we are seeing some areas now getting to be above the 50th or even some areas the 70th percentile. However, our grasses are definitely curing in many of these areas despite the lowered ERCs. And you can see that on the 10-hour fuel moisture. We are seeing critical areas over much of southern and eastern Nevada into Utah, and quite a bit of drying going on across the rest of Nevada and Utah, and even up into parts of Idaho. The 100-hour fuel moisture is most critical and driest across the lower areas of the Great Basin. However, across all of Nevada and Utah and up into Idaho, we are seeing that significant drying with the recent heat and low relative humidity. The satellite loop from this morning shows an area of low pressure off the Southern California coast, which will be moving eastward, and this will be responsible for the increase in winds and the moisture with some thunderstorms over southern and eastern areas of the Great Basin. You can see other troughs of low pressure off the west coast, and these will be an impact later in the week and going into next week as well. So for today, again, you can see that area of low pressure tracking eastward with that moisture for some thunderstorm increases from Arizona up into Utah. And also the winds will be increasing, so we do have a high risk for winds today with those low relative humidities over parts of the Arizona Strip into far southern Utah. Other areas are just seeing definitely some drying trends going on for Nevada and Utah. And you can see today those relative humidities in the single digits or low teens, with the exception of where those thunderstorms will start developing. We'll have some increases, especially in the higher terrain, of relative humidity above 15%. But you can see where that lower relative humidity overlaps the stronger wind gusts over Arizona into southern Utah. And again, that's the main concern today. We will also see some typical zephyr winds along the Sierra Front today, but mostly gusts in the 25 to 30 mile per hour range. Max temperatures today still will see highs in the upper 90s across many valleys of Nevada and Utah today, and again above 105 in the far south. And precipitation, you can see that spotty precipitation going through today. However, we will see those increases further south. Looking at Friday, we will see this main low in the south track further east with much of that moisture over the eastern side of the geographic area, but with this next trough approaching the Pacific Northwest is where we'll see our wind increases over western areas. So we do have a high risk for gusty winds and low relative humidity tomorrow over parts of western Nevada and the Sierra Front. And looking at Friday, you can see relative humidity in this western area generally in the low teens or around 10% in some areas, and the increase in wind gusts with more gusts in that 30 to 35 mile per hour range. So again, most critical areas over there. We will see some breezy winds up north in Idaho on Friday, but relative humidity is higher and fuels are not as critical. Looking at temperatures, as this next trough moves in, we will see some cooling. So instead of upper 90s over much of the northern half of Nevada and Utah, it will be more low to mid 90s. So the beginning of a decrease in temperatures. And precipitation, again, mostly focused over the eastern half of the region, but we will see a couple of those isolated cells pop over anywhere from the central Sierra up into Nevada. On Saturday, the system swings through the north, so we could see some moisture with some showers or thunderstorms either late Friday night or early Saturday morning over parts of Idaho and Wyoming, but for the most part drier further south, especially into Nevada. Could still see some of those gusty winds, but right now no high risk for Nevada or Utah. But we will see again, still even with that front moving by to the north, single-digit relative humidity across much of Nevada and Utah, and still those breezy winds in Utah on Saturday, but right now it's not looking like winds will be any stronger than Friday, and if anything a little bit weaker, so holding off on that high risk, but we will be monitoring that. And then looking at Saturday, our temperatures continue to decrease. We'll see highs in the upper 80s across most of Nevada and Utah with the exception of the far south, and highs in the 60s and 70s up north. And again, you could see some of that moisture with that front early on Saturday across parts of Idaho or Wyoming. Here's the 3-day precipitation. Again, much of that will be today and tomorrow as you get into the Arizona Strip and eastern Utah, with very spotty precipitation further west. And then looking at going into the weekend, that first low tracks off to the east, and we have another low approaching the Pacific Northwest coast, but still kind of a drier day across much of the Great Basin with gradually decreasing temperatures. And then it's really going into later on Sunday and Monday where this trough really starts to drop south and swing through the Great Basin. So we'll see a more significant decrease in temperatures and a pretty windy day on tap overall on Monday across the Great Basin. So we'll continue to monitor areas in Nevada and Utah for any potential high risk with these gusty winds, as right now it does not seem like relative humidity will be increasing with this system, with any moisture up north. And then on Tuesday, the system continues to swing through still with breezy winds, and then on Wednesday finally moves off to the east. But you can still see, again, not really expecting any increase in moisture, although we will see the decrease in temperature. 7-day total precipitation, much of this is occurring over the next couple of days, but you can see up in Idaho with this next system, certainly could see some showers, especially up in the central mountains. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from mid to late June, shows still warmer conditions and generally near normal or drier conditions for much of the Great Basin, with the exception of the Four Corners area. Could see some of that moisture start to track north over eastern Utah. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.